Madison Board of Selectmen to order at 4:30. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Approval of the minutes from October 14th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Non-public minutes from October 15th. That's not really public.
I had two sets or two.
One set's from the 17th. Right? Oh, no, they're both the 15th, sorry.
There's two from the 15th and one from,
September 17th. Oh, yeah. So two from the 15th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a second to accept all three sets of minutes.
We're going with just the two from the 15th for now.
All right, I make a second to.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, now we'll go for the non-public from the 17th. These are ones we unsealed.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the 17th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Approval of the manifests. Payroll, $30,623.81. Payroll liabilities, $9,788.24. Accounts payable, $30,529.58. $325,000 to Madison Elementary School for a total of $395,941.73.
Make a motion to accept the manifest.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public comment? Seeing no public comment? Discussion items and new business, Sean Bergeron and the Silver Lake Dam. How's it going, Sean?
I'm well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just hold this way?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, what would you like? I provided to you, we have the quote from Turner,
Yep.
and maybe just a little bit of, maybe the backstory, so to speak. You'll recall that we had, it was MSK Engineering that did the analysis of the dam, the inspection of the dam, told us what the conditions, or the condition of it and its various components are, and then gave us an idea as to what work needed to be done in order to bring this thing to an acceptable condition. That gets us to where we are right now. Just so that you understand, it was MSK Engineering that did that analysis and inspection for us. This proposal is from H.L. Turner because what I wanted to do was, the gentleman you'll notice who signed the agreement from Turner is Charles Teal, Eric Teal to me. Charles had been working for MSK at the time, and I want to continue along with him because, quite frankly, engineering related to these dams is pretty unusual. He's exceptionally good at it. I've worked with Turner, I've worked with MSK. I don't have an issue going one to the other. I wanted to stay with him, okay? So the proposal that we have from the Turner Group is to develop all the plans and specifications necessary to put this thing out to bid, okay? And what I did, if you look at, I provided my spreadsheet too, okay? So Turner has quoted us $83,000 for their services. But their services get us to a point. For instance, within their proposal, you note that they're going to provide to us draft plans, draft specifications that need to be reviewed and approved before they can bring those to a final state. So if the town of Madison, for instance, if you want the DPW to review those plans and specifications, that would be fine. You could cross off items 2 and 3. I don't need to review them. If you prefer that I review them, then I've carried a $2,220 allowance twice to review the project manual and the draft plans. Item number 4, the test borings. That is something Turner and Eric have said to me. They At this time, test borings are not anticipated to be required. However, if deemed necessary at a later date, a ballpark allowance of $10,000 plus or minus should be considered. So what I've done as I've developed the spreadsheet, wherever it says an allowance, those are funds that in an ideal world we wouldn't spend or we wouldn't spend all of, but I'm not comfortable in not carrying those allowance funds. Should we need them and not have them, then we're in a problem situation. But if we have them and don't use them, we're in a better situation. So that's what the various allowances, they cover different items going through the process of designing the project through the plans and specifications, and it brings us to that grand total of $165,540.
So what's the time frame in which we would spend 165? Are we talking a year, or are we saying this is a multi-year project?
Joy, what this should be, when we turn them loose, say this were approved by the voters at the annual meeting, they would probably start the work, I would say right off, probably in April, May, weather dependent, because the first thing that has to be done is some surveying. So weather dependent, let's say we start them April, May, we should have complete plans and specification packages ready to bid by, say, September. Okay, so my hope would be have everything ready to bid so that we put the project out to bid just about in a year, say November or so of 2025. Have a bid number that we could then take to the voters at the annual meeting in 2026 to approve.
So that 165 basically gets us as far as a year from now.
That's right.
And it'll be used up between March and November.
That's right. If we raise it at the annual meeting in March of 2025, we'll spend that money in 2025, and that gets us to the point where we will have in our hands the bid value for the project.
So, next question. Any guesstimate whatsoever on the bid?
I know we had, if you go back, and I didn't bring it with me, Joy, but if you go back to the engineering analysis that was done, we had a number, and my recollection is somewhere in the area of $2 million.
Yeah. I remember it being at least $1 million. So,
Oh yeah, it's a big project.
Yeah.
And frankly, when I saw the number that they had carried, I thought that it was being a little not cautious enough, frankly. You know, I sort of over the years have developed this rule. If I say it's $1 million and it comes in at $990, I'm a genius. But if it's 101, I'm an idiot. So I'd rather err on the side of caution. I think it's about $2 million project.
And what, I know it's not in great shape, and I know we've kind of estimated the urgency, but
When I talked with the engineering group after they did that inspection, the general thought was, look, we can get a few more years out of this, but don't start pushing it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a caveat to that. If we, this most recent year, the summer of 2024 wasn't bad. It was no summer of 2023 in terms of rainfall. If we have this ridiculous winter with a huge amount of snow melt, and if we were to have a lot of rain, there's no guarantees here. But honestly, the climate change being what it has shown us, that thing could be in 100% excellent condition.
we still don't know.
All bets are off.
Yeah. What are the consequences of that dam failure?
Consequences of that dam failure, what we've learned is that the box culvert on East Madison Road, East Shore, that is East Shore, would handle the flow. It would be about this close, but it would handle the flow. Everybody's lakefront property would be significantly changed. Once it
Bigger?
goes, what's that?
Bigger?
Shallower and
Yeah.
further out.
Oh,
The good thing about this is once that water, if that dam were to breach in its entirety immediately, the box culvert would handle it. And interestingly, once it makes it through that box culvert, on the downstream side, there's only a couple structures down towards the Ossipee Lake Road further, because it broadens out, it's a big, wooded wetland through there. It really wouldn't cause any harm. That's the good news.
okay,
But the people in the lake wouldn't be happy.
right, understood.
So we need the dam?
We need the dam in order to have Silver Lake, okay, as we know it today. And if you think about it this way, if I recall correctly, we would lose, let's say for this conversation, about 8 feet of elevation of water level. So if you figure how far you'd walk out in that lake for 8 feet, you'd see what it would do to Silver Lake. It would be vastly changed.
Right. And there are spots of it that, you know, those little islands in between where those
Those would be big
islands would be, yeah, would be a little bigger.
We created an ETF at last year's town meeting, the dam project. Did we expend everything that was in that ETF this year? Not much left though.
No,
right?
there's so much left.
Yeah, I think we only had
Maybe
like
like-
$10,000.
Yeah, 10 or 15, I believe is what it was.
Since-
So Sean, that might be, so if that catastrophically let go, it would then be a good opportunity to totally repair it out, and how long would it take the water to recover to a workplace level of what it is today?
Mike, I couldn't say because that's gonna be entire, like, if we look at where we are right now, our rainfall is significantly down. So the watershed that, you know, works its way into Silver Lake and keeps that thing at its lake level, it's gonna depend. I did a dam many years ago now up in North Conway, and it filled up very quickly. And then that dam, interestingly, somebody did some modifications to it a few years later and it breached. And when we went back and repaired it, it then took quite a lot longer to fill up just because of the weather those seasons.
So it could be multiple years.
Mike, I don't think it would be multiple years, but again, it's weather dependent.
I think it would affect value of all that property,
It would certainly affect the value of that property.
which then would affect our tax income.
Yep. Yes.
I spoke with someone from SLAM this week, and they have a watershed management project that they're looking to do. They've been pre-approved for grant funding and things like that. I don't know if these two projects tie in at all.
I don't know, Joy,
Okay.
I'm not aware of that. One
Okay.
thing, and not to interrupt you, but I did talk with a few people. I'm gonna do a little research to see if there might be some grant monies out there. I don't know that there are, but it's always worth an ask.
Yeah, because I'm thinking the watershed management plan is, of course, for the watershed around Silver Lake, and trying to come up with project plans on how to maintain it, you know, not only to keep invasive species out, but for the blooms there. The-
Oh, for the algae blooms?
Yeah, and
Yes.
things like that. So I know those are components of it. So I don't know if this is, and they have a full grant, or they've been pre-approved for a grant to handle pretty much everything, or a loan. So I didn't know if there was some way, if they were related enough to work together on something, but I
There's
don't
no
know.
reason to not ask.
Yeah. There has to be grants to fix this dam. There has to be somewhere.
I will
I
tell
would
you
think.
that I said that, and the quick response I got was, yeah, maybe not. But the thing is, as those of us who work with grants every now and again know, some years there's no grant money, and some years there's grant money. It depends which agencies and people come forward with grants. So we can continue to ask and see what happens.
So we're looking at a total cost of how much to repair?
To repair,
Yeah,
2 million.
2 million?
I think it could be $2 million, John.
So what we need to do is raise and appropriate into that fund $165,540 this year, and then worry about a potential bond in '26 for the repair itself.
And the good thing, Adam, is that, again, just about a year from now, I'd want to bid the project. So we would then have, and when we bid the project in late 2025, we would say to the bidding contractors, we are expecting you to hold this number
Until
until
annual
construction
meeting.
time.
Yeah.
So we would know the number going into the annual meeting.
Yep.
How long a project you think to take to repair? Just the repair portion?
Goods most of the summer. So what they're gonna do, John, and we looked at this in two different ways. We looked at draining the lake, because the work that has to be done what they call in the dry. They're not working in the water. So we looked at just emptying the thing. And if we do that, there's gonna be some savings, because you don't have to build a coffer dam upstream and keep it pumped. But by the same token, I'm not sure that we could all suffer through the screaming of Silver Lake being 8 to 10 feet lower through a summer season. So my plan is that we'll go with the cofferdam method, but they're still gonna need a construction season to do it.
They couldn't do it in the fall
They cannot do it, there won't be enough time.
because the lake's already down.
I agree, but you're, with the nature of the work that's going on, cooling temperatures are not favorable for this.
So we'll have limited access to the boat, that's the boat launch side, yeah.
It will probably have some effect on the boat launch, Eric. I'm sorry, Adam, I think one of the things that we could do is, again, put into the plans and specifications that we design this project in such a way that some level of access needs to be available to that boat launch. I don't know that would be that difficult.
When you say
It's a fair distance.
Yeah.
when you say cofferdam, what is that and where would it go?
So what you do, Joy, is you drive essentially, picture steel roofing, okay, sheets of steel roofing. Stand them on end out in the lake and you drive those down with a pile driver.
Okay.
And they interlock, and so that makes a dam upstream of the dam. A little water leaks through, you keep that pumped out, but then around one side of it, you still have to keep a spillway because even during the summer when that dam is in its, the boards are as high as we put them, there's still some water flowing through. So you have to make provisions in the water to get around there.
And so that would be how far out from the dam being repaired?
I don't know. Probably 30 feet, probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was about the number they used when they redid the boat ramp. They had to block off about 30 feet out.
Yeah. And you need to keep that area between the cofferdam and where you're working, you keep it pumped.
Isn't that what they do on Oak Island when they're dredging?
Maybe, I don't know.
It is exactly what they
Is
do.
it- okay, yeah.
I have family members obsessed with that show. Okay. So I suppose, yeah, if it were to fail and the lake were to go down 8 feet, it still wouldn't be dry enough to do the work.
You're still gonna be dealing with water.
Yeah, and still have to do the cofferdam and all that.
It would be a reduced cofferdam, but
Yeah.
you're still gonna be dealing with water.
Well, I think we need to put some money aside for the warrant article just to get all the design work done and then we'll deal with it 2026.
We're gonna add a warrant for that figure, a warrant article.
You agree?
Yeah, we definitely gotta start saving for it. We're just gonna be hurting next year. We have so many expenses coming up next year. Side note, what does it take to get on the warrant? Like, are there things that the select board can put on like this? Or like, if somebody came from the community, with a similar project from, related to Silver Lake, say this watershed project, group that they're talking about, could they bring that to the select board and the select board could evaluate it and then possibly put it on, or does everything have to be by petition, or how does?
No, it's your document,
Yeah.
so you guys have the ability to put on whatever you want.
Okay,
But there are times when the selectmen in the past have said they would rather see some community support for it, so that's why they asked for the petition versus them making the decision,
that makes sense.
so.
All right,
But
thank
it's
you.
totally your document, so you guys can put whatever you want.
Okay, thank you. Yikes.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? Sean, what's your timeline for having that information that you presented to them sort of approved by the selectmen so that they know that 165 number is accurate? I mean, you said at one point there's a piece where either you could review it or you could have the DPW review it. When do they have to make that decision?
Actually, that decision would have to be made once we turn this engineering firm loose. So that total number, 165,540, in fact, you're welcome to have this, includes all the allowances.
Okay.
Okay, they're all in there. And then we can sort of do a bit of a shopping list and maybe take some of them out.
So we'll have to raise and appropriate the entire amount, and then hopefully we'll have some left over to put towards fixing the actual dam,
Right.
potentially.
We're gonna need a lot more
A
though.
lot more. Okay. All right,
What's that with me, sir?
we're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Donahue, PFAS.
Hi, thank you for providing me a spot on the agenda. I have provided Linda with 8 questions on PFAS. Do you have those?
I do.
We do.
John, you have these?
I do.
We do.
I'm just trying to get on first base, trying to understand the situation Madison finds itself in. And as you know, I asked a few questions last selectmen's meeting, and so I find myself here with these 8 questions, and shall we go one by one, or?
Yeah.
I think most of these questions probably need to be answered by the emergency director.
Not necessarily. I think I have the majority of your answers.
You have the
here.
majority,
Yeah.
okay. And if I could ask you to speak up, I'm dealing with an allergy problem, and I appreciate you speaking up a little bit. So, question 1, when did the town realize they had PFAS problem in the municipal complex?
2021.
2021? Beginning of 2021?
I believe, second quarter 2021, I believe.
Okay. And was there a point person that was going to be in charge of this?
I mean, Michael is always a point of contact, but the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen is responsible.
The emergency director?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if you can answer this, but why did it take 4 requests from DES before the town complied with their request for risk assessment of the wells?
To the best of my knowledge, it didn't. We got a request in 2021 for some testing because some testing that was done across the street. We did our testing, it didn't match the same results that they got, so their
For the
problem-
risk assessment, or just testing of the wells?
I don't recall 4 requests that were not answered. Every time we've been contacted by DES, we have done what they've asked.
No, I kind of read those communications between the town and DES, and it seemed to me that there were 4 requests. So,
And everyone that I know of has been answered, so unless you have information or paperwork to the contrary, I am not aware of it.
Private intervene. I know on the website, then maybe there's some of the town's correspondence that's not on, that DES hasn't uploaded, but Donna has a point that there are several letters from DES to the town, like every 60 or 90 days, that said they haven't received a response. And
Not to my, like I said, to my knowledge, everything that we've received, we have responded to. Everything that has been brought to this board has been responded to.
does the town have copies of those responses?
We should, yes.
Is there a place where you could allow us to view them?
I can touch base with Michael about contacts and responses, yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay, my big concern is number 4. Were the town employees told about the contamination in their drinking water? And if so, when? And if not, why? And how were they told?
So, no, there was not an official memo that went out about this, but all town employees were made aware via word of mouth, and every town facility, other than the library, because I haven't been in there, and they may have one, I don't know, has a water bubbler. Nobody drinks from the faucet up here. These are all bottled water
They
facilities.
were told by word of mouth?
I would imagine, yes. My point is, nobody's drinking the faucet water, and that is your concern. The DPW garage has a water bottle, bubbler. Town office has water bottle, bubbler. Town shed for the ballpark has a water bottle, bubbler. I assume the library does. You correct me if I'm wrong, but
When was that water afforded them?
that water
And
has been afforded them since before my time. So before the PFAS contamination was even made aware.
Just so you know, Adam, I heard word of mouth in March of 2020.
Okay.
2023,
And when did you get your water?
I requested it, or I inquired with Linda about getting a bubbler, and I got it a couple months later, because for some reason there was some hiccup, not Linda's issue, but
Did the town provide that?
the town provided it,
You said 2023?
2023. March 2023 is when I found out.
23?
23 is when I found out, by word of mouth.
And the first test was February of 2021, and that resulted in the 429 nanograms per liter. Current EPA standard is 4.
So this is a
So that's
concern.
10, times 10.
And there was no memo sent out, it was
Like I
just
said, I
word of
wasn't here in
mouth?
2021 either,
Huh?
so, I wasn't here in 2021 either, so.
So these are questions that need to be answered by the emergency management director, I imagine.
Potentially, I mean, it's probably in the minutes from the 2021 selectmen's meetings
I
as well.
mean, you asked me to present
Yep.
questions.
And my
and-
answer to your question number 4 is that, like I said, I was not aware that the library didn't have a bubbler beforehand, but I know that every other facility up here did. And that was your main concern.
We have our emergency director here, maybe he could address the question.
There was no, to the best of my knowledge, there was no formal memo that went out in 2021 to all the employees regarding PFAS. No,
Not that I know of.
Whose responsibility would that have been?
that would be
Is it the
this board,
selectmen's
this board.
responsibility? Okay,
Yes.
and the selectmen, and I recognize this
Yeah.
before your time, you have to go
Yeah.
back and look at the minutes, but Mr. Aruda was here. Would it not have been prudent to at least notify the employees in those buildings that were affected officially that there's a problem? I don't understand why the town didn't send a letter, notice, memo, email, anything. Word of mouth in a situation where there's a forever chemical in the drinking water that's 400 times what the allowable limit is. It seems to me to register for a little bit of an urgent response from the town to notify people that there's an issue and get them off the town water and get them onto bottled water. A 2-year lag in notifying the library and a lack of formal notification, doing it just word of mouth. I mean, I know it's hindsight, but it doesn't sound prudent.
Well, it's past now and I wasn't here, but
So,
everybody knows
that-
now.
We know the library wasn't notified at all, it was just word of mouth in 2023. But how about the town garage or Madison TV?
They've always
Or-
had,
Excuse
Bottled
me?
water.
they've always had water available that is not from the ground,
Yeah, and that
including the transfer station.
PEG TV isn't
Yes.
fed from the same well. That well feeds
Since
the
we came in
library.
this building in 2000, there has been water supplied upstairs.
But what about the town garage or the fire department or Madison TV? When did they get their
Madison
bottled
TV
water?
and the lower garage are not on that same.
What?
Madison TV and the lower garage are not on the affected well. Am I correct? Thank you. It's a
Has their
separate
water
well.
been tested?
That I am not sure of. It is within, is that within the radius? That must be in the, I'd have to look at
What's the question?
the lower garage. What do we have for a well that feeds the lower garage anyway? Is there another?
That was
well?
private property before we bought it. It has its own well, I'm not
Yeah.
even sure where it is.
I know that the school is on, the map as having tested for PFAS, and they are clean as can be. There's 0. So chances are, if there's a well right next door feeding the lower garage, chances, not
Is
confirmed, but
that-
chances are it would be.
Is that one of the
Okay.
wells that are being tested of late?
So there's one well behind the library that provides water to the municipal complex, meaning the buildings.
Mhm.
There were 5 wells installed to do just testing.
Right.
And then I think Mike and Adam suggested or proposed something last time that I'd recommended before, which was testing the well up behind the sheds on Burke Field.
Which they
Having
did
that.
yesterday.
It's great.
Okay. Did the town inform the residents and businesses within the 500 feet, 500 feet of the well about the contamination? And if so, when, and if not, why?
As of yesterday and today, those wells are being dealt with by Wilcox and Barton. they have gone knocking on doors, leaving doorknob notes and those sorts of things, testing the wells. I think they got 7 or 8 responses to the 14 or 15 wells that were affected.
So in 2021, when you found out the well was contaminated and,
In 2021, when we found out the well was contaminated, to the best of our knowledge, we followed all of DES protocol. Notifying those people was not part of that protocol. We are not scientists. We cannot know that we need to notify all these people unless they tell us we have to, and it was not part of the deal.
DES didn't tell you to notify the,
Not until Wilcox and Barton came up and said we
the
need to test.
residents?
No.
Did anyone have a conversation with DES regarding that? Like, pick up the phone, call them and say, hey, this is interesting to us, but is there anything else we should be doing from a prudent standpoint that, you know, might not be spelled out in the regs or something, but is there something else we should be doing to be preparing for down the road?
We had all the necessary conversations with DES and followed their protocol. That's their
Well,
job.
I'm hoping after the testing, it bodes well for that decision. So when will the recent testing be available to Madison residents?
That I do not know. They tested yesterday and today, so
Yesterday, how long does it usually take?
I am not sure.
They tell us 30 days.
30 days.
All right, well, and lastly, could be very costly for the town. How are we preparing for such a costly event?
I believe we were looking into grants, but also at this point, we have to wait and see how many wells are contaminated and how many systems we need. We don't have any idea how much this is gonna cost, but we have grants and we have town meeting. Those are our options.
What happens if those results come back in, not in favor of, the numbers? What liability does the town have?
As far as
Providing, well, immediate response would be providing bottled water.
Yep.
That would be the immediate response.
And then we would need to raise and appropriate sums to install filtration systems, just like we will have to here.
So if I recall, I rewatched the October 5th, 2023 meeting when Wilcox and Barton came for the first time. They said this is hundreds of thousands of dollars to perform all of this remediation. And then they said the town of Stratham was paying between $70,000 and $80,000 a year afterwards for well monitoring. And I believe it was said they're a bigger town, so that they might have a bigger reach. So we might not be hit with 70 to 80, but they're forever chemicals, and we likely need to be monitoring forever.
But I would suggest likely not having to monitor the entire town.
No, it would just be those affected.
areas within the contamination zone, if you will.
Yeah.
So sort of, I get that the past is the past, and that, that at least two of you weren't here for when this all initially came up, but I guess my concern is that I haven't seen any amount of urgency and or real planning for what's to happen going forward. A, how to avoid this kind of a situation going forward again. B, you know, what's the plan, or at least what's the rudimentary plan for how to deal with this, and it's a forever chemical. It's probably not going away. I know that there are organizations working on trying to use you know, charcoal and other mediums in order to filter it out if they can. But then you always have the issue of what do you do with the medium that you're using to filter with? How do you dispose of that? What, if anything, is being done to work forward as opposed to
Well, that is why
waiting?
we engaged Wilcox and Barton in all these testings, and they gave us the recommendation for a filtration system, and we have to engage a company to install that filtration system. Go ahead, Mike.
On that very note, there's an organization, a company that got some kind of state contract to do just that. They're working with the town of Stratham and a couple of others. The grant funding that we've already applied for, we haven't gotten any response to that yet. But the one thing we need to do right now is we need a filtration system on that well on town property. The testing that happened yesterday and today is gonna determine what, if any, results there are off this property. If anything is found at all, we're gonna have to do another round of testing 1,000 feet until we identify the scope of the disbursement in the groundwater. And that's gonna identify, and every time something is found, we're on the hook for one of these filtration systems, and I don't truly understand how they operate, but it is some carbon-based filter. And because we will engage a professional to do it, at least I would hope that we will.
I'm not doing it.
And then we would have a contract.
Right.
And they would be the ones changing out the filters. And nobody has an answer to that. It's just like the batteries for the electric cars. They don't know what they're gonna do with them when they're not serviceable anymore. Nobody knows. I don't know what they're gonna do. Certainly somebody's gotta be figuring this out, because there's towns that have been dealing with this for years. And I don't know how long those filters last.
Right.
I suppose it probably amounts to what the concentration in the water is. But as I understand it, it's a two-phase system, and they'll have a test port in between. So when they test that water that's filtered, as soon as they get a reading outside the first filter, they'll replace that filter. And I don't,
So the PFAS isn't going to go away, obviously, forever chemicals and all that, but McLean across the street, their numbers match, or the two PFAS chemicals that are elevated in their well are the two that are most elevated right at that monitoring well along Long Village Road, in between the fire station and the library. And I looked historically at their numbers, and they've gone up over the past 5 years. One of the numbers is almost doubled, and the other one is close to double. So it's in the soil, it's everywhere around this area. I mean, the Wilcox and Barton did soil testing. We had elevated levels of PFAS in the soil. What has Wilcox and Barton given us any indication of how to remediate that? Because we can keep filtering the water all we want, but the chemicals just keep coming.
and I asked that question of them, and there's no protocol in place from DES to deal with the soil. Because obviously, and there's also no answer of, we're on the hook for everything, but it hasn't been definitively proven that it even originated at the town. It's just that firefighting foam is the most likely culprit that they've come up with. And the fact is, in the 70s and 80s, it was the only foam available, and every fire department had that. And
So New Hampshire
I can
had,
remember the days in the early 80s where the fire department would release the foam into the parking lot, into the, in front of the fire station.
right,
They
before it
just
was
used to
known.
release it.
Yeah,
I
before it was
remember that, I
known.
saw it. I mean, that's before your time probably, but that's what they did. And I think that was typical behavior for fire departments. But I have to say, I'm pleased this board finally put up the $11,000 to test the additional wells. I mean, to think you wouldn't have the money to do that when we just bought a $600,000 grader, not in the budget, is.
All right, I think we're getting off topic. Do you have any other questions, Tom?
Yeah, just keep your constituents informed, please. Keep it as an ongoing agenda item. I think it merits that.
Just to finish my comment on the soil question, if it did originate at the fire department, and I understand that whenever you use foam, there's residual in the hoses, and I think what you might be referring to is flushing those hoses out. That might have happened. But if anything came out of the trucks directly and went in, there was a period of time when the floor drain was piped into, it flowed into the septic tank and was pumped up into the leach field. That's the most likely scenario to get concentrations in the ground, if it came from that at all. I asked the question about whether or not we'd have to excavate that leach field to remove material to deal with this. And that's when I got the answer that there was no protocol in place. And I think chiefly because even if we did do that, they don't, what then do they do with the soil? They don't know. They don't have a plan.
Where is that leach field?
It's underneath the driveway, kind of at the back. It's right off the side of this building, basically. If you see the little, the vent pipe,
Oh, yeah.
that's on one side, and according to the septic plan, there's supposed to be one of those vents on the other side, but it's never been able to be found.
I thought you couldn't drive over a leach field.
You can if you build it right, and
Okay.
apparently they must have built it right, because that's where it is.
Okay.
Still working.
The worst wells, though, are the two in front of the fire station and the one next to the leach field.
That makes sense.
Right, it
Right.
makes sense that that's
Well, it's because
firefighting foam.
they're downgrading.
Right. And then there was a take-back program. There was a AFFF take-back program that the fire marshal had sent out messages to all the fire departments in the state of New Hampshire. Did we participate?
We didn't have to, because we didn't have any.
Okay.
We haven't had the offensive foam since late 80s, early 90s. We only ever had one truck that had that foam on it. And we retrofitted that truck and utilized that Class B foam tank for Class A foam since right after I joined the department in the mid-90s.
Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, just a statement. To me, this was a town health crisis. And I think completely in the future, we have to have public hearing or public meeting and make everyone available to the information. To rely upon word of mouth is to get information on such a critical health issue as this. I think moving forward, looking forward, anytime there's anything that people are at risk in the municipality, whether it's a section or whatever, there should be a public forum where people can gather to get questions answered and get up to speed, because people are finding out this information in dribbles. And I think it would be very productive for the town. And especially if there's funding that's gonna be needed, people are gonna be aware, they're gonna say, oh, we need this, and they'll fund it.
There is a lot of funding out there.
Exactly, I was gonna say that. I think I sent Linda a link or an article about, there is tremendous amount of federal and state money directly focused on this issue. I mean, a lot of money.
And PFOA and PFOS,
Yeah.
which are two of the four chemicals in our, or
Linda,
mouse
did I
chemicals in our
send
well.
that to you? It was, but maybe 2-3 months ago?
I don't remember.
Um, They have been deemed hazardous substances under the Superfund law. So that's incredible news. And Superfund sites, we are not one, but Superfund sites, the chemical companies, DuPont, 3M, have to pay to clean those up. So I don't know, but also speaking of being not a Superfund site, in order to get some of the federal funds, they call it for public water supplies. According to the New Hampshire, hold on. According to the New Hampshire DES, McLean's has a public water supply. The school is a public water supply. That well is a domestic well.
That, I read that and I couldn't believe it. Why is that not a public water supply?
I don't know, that's a question I would think for the DES to get classified as such, because it's,
I would think it has to service a number of people, if I remember correctly. There's a cutoff, the number of people required to make it a public drinking facility.
well, the library's got a lot of people in and out.
Town hall has a lot of people in and out.
Who would you ask that question to? DES?
That would be my guess. DES.
They would be the ones that would categorize it.
Yeah.
Could you guys find out why that's not a public water supply?
Do you want me to reach out, Mike?
No, yeah, you can, I can, it doesn't matter. I gotta follow up with them anyway to find out when and if they're gonna make a decision on the grant that we applied for.
That struck me as odd.
In that October 5th meeting last year, they mentioned an Amy Russo who was in charge of the state funding. Is that what we're going through?
Yep.
Okay. Then they also mentioned ARPA money. They said that,
ARPA money is money that we would already have from the COVID times. That was just
Right.
what he
Do
mentioned.
we have
that
any-
Some towns had used
yeah.
to,
Do we have any left, Linda?
We do
Any guess
How
as to how
much?
much?
$40,000.
That would
I'm
help.
sorry.
How much?
40,000?
I think, that's kind of a
Round
guesstimate.
number.
That would help. Because Wilcox and Barton said that was actually also, that would help cover consulting costs, which they'd mentioned that's what they're doing, so that would help cover their costs. And then again, all these federal funds. Speaking of being in touch with DES, did we submit the supplemental site investigation? The schedule for the supplemental site investigation. We had 30 days to respond from that September 6th letter from them, where they kind of transferred it over as to a hazmat project as opposed to.
yeah, that's what we're doing right now, yesterday and today.
I thought there was like a full schedule for it that had to be submitted.
It's one step at a time. And this step was approved, so it's being executed with the 500-foot radius. Get these test results, see what they are. That'll determine the next step, if there is a next step.
The 178-page report that they submitted to the DES was the FSI, the focus site investigation. And so they said in that letter responding to the focus site investigation that now please submit a schedule for your supplemental set. Because that wasn't on the One Stop website.
That is what we went through at, 3 meetings ago.
Yeah, I don't,
And that is what Wilcox and Barton is engaged in now, is the supplemental site.
Okay. So the DES just didn't post it yet? And I have it in my
Sounds like they're not
documentation
posting a
somewhere.
lot.
I don't know anything about what they post and how they do it, but I do know that the recommendation that Wilcox and Barton made to do the testing of a 500-foot radius, et cetera, that was officially approved by DES. Amy Gibney is the person who's.
She was, then she handed it off, or?
Yeah, I think they're transitioning to a different branch of the tree,
Yeah.
but it's all the same plan. So this is the next step that we just are in the process of executing. Like I say, the water samples were done yesterday, and yesterday there were some people that weren't at home or whatever, and they came back this morning to get them and then knock on the remaining doors that they didn't get responses yesterday. So those, whatever tests they were able to do, samples they were able to draw, will be submitted to the lab for analysis, and we'll wait for those results, and then they're gonna give us a report that's gonna tell us what they recommend for the next step. Like I say, anticipate if they find these chemicals in a residential well, then we're gonna have to go out further, because the whole thing we're doing right now is trying to identify the scope of the problem.
Question, Sharon?
Yes, so, the letter from DES after the 178-page report based on the FSI, is that what it was called? Required that the town, because the letter, DES letter was to the town in early September, that the town respond within 30 days. Did we respond to them with what that SSI plan is, and do you have a copy of that response that the public could take a look at, since DES doesn't appear to be uploading documents very timely?
If I recall correctly.
Or did we just go through Wilcox and Barton and have them?
They're our agent for this process with DES.
So do we have a copy of what Wilcox and Barton submitted? Was that given to the selectmen? Do you
Yes.
have a copy of that plan?
Not right here, but yes. Yes.
No, not right here.
No, but that's what we had the night that Russ Barton came here
Yes, we had a copy in front of us.
to present that
3 meetings
and
ago.
explain what the numbers and everything meant.
So there's a copy of that on file with the
Yes.
town?
Yes.
Okay, I'd be interested in seeing
No,
that.
he was here to discuss the 178-page focus site investigation.
He was also here
It's
to
one
discuss.
and the same.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
He was here to discuss the focus site investigation as well as their recommendation. At the time he was here, DES had not responded yet. And I believe it was 2 weeks later, DES had responded and said they agreed with what their recommendation was and please move forward. And that's what we're doing.
And they asked for a schedule. We're just asking if that schedule was submitted, that's all.
Wilcox, yes,
Okay.
Wilcox and Barton is responding on our behalf to anything that DES requests. Wilcox and Barton is responding on our behalf because that is what we're paying them to do.
And that schedule was to do a round of testing, and they said they were gonna do it yesterday and today. And DES approved that or agreed with the plan.
Do we know if the opera funds can be allocated towards a situation like this? I mean,
It's possible.
hmm?
It's possible. I
I
don't
think that's
know
what
for
other
sure. but-
towns, I think that's what other towns are doing, so, and we have about 40,000 left?
We're not 100% sure, but that's the guess at
Yeah.
the moment without looking at it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry, I just have
Last
one
one.
more question and a statement. I'll ask the question first, and it's of Mike Brooks. You indicated that the floor drain in the fire department used to be piped out to, where is it piped now? When was that change made, do you know?
Not exactly, but it was as directed by DES at some point in time, over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's currently, the internal plumbing, we still have the drain, and it goes into, there's a sump in the closet with a sump pump, and it currently, in accordance with DES directive, is pumped out. That white pipe that you see in front of the building, it's pumped out onto the surface of the ground.
So it's going back into the ground.
So anything that's collected in that drain underneath the floor of the fire department is still going into the ground?
Yeah,
And it used to be pumped into the septic?
yep.
Beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, and then I just had one comment that I just wanted to agree with Mike, that I think that this matter is of significant importance to people when you start talking about public health matters. I think that it would behoove the selectmen to at least on a regular basis, at planned milestones or planned phases, when you get the results back from Wilcox and Barton, to hold public meetings and discuss with the town. Whoever shows up is gonna be interested parties. I would suspect not the entire town's gonna show up, but I think it's important from a information standpoint to keep the citizens in the town informed of what's going on and where we stand and what the plan is going forward, so that there's a level of comfort that that there is a plan, that things are being done and it's being addressed.
I think it should be a policy because this board changes all the time and, new people, but I think it should be a policy.
So I think one of the things that we need to talk about for next steps is testing employees, because there's the medical monitoring piece where you have your blood tested for PFAS levels. DuPont and all of them have to pay for medical monitoring for life, meaning your numbers are high, you get monitored for the cancers that are related, the thyroid disease, the hypertension, the immune disorders. And should you develop one of these down the road, your medical expenses are covered. So I think along the lines of testing the water and testing the soil, I think employees should have their blood tested for PFAS levels. Because it isn't just what you're drinking. It's washing your dishes in it and drinking from your coffee mug that you've just washed in the water. It's contact. It is through contact. And again, as Mike and I were talking about briefly the last time, the firefighter gear has, I don't know that we have it, but intense amounts of PFAS. And as it breaks down, it's breaking down into the skin of the firefighters. And that's another high-risk group. So I don't know if that's something our health insurance already covers, or if this is something that the state will support, you know, for employees to have done.
NIH grants, maybe.
Mike, is that something you can add to your list, ask DES?
Your ever-growing list.
And then, of course, the lawsuits are another revenue, not revenue, but funding source. Massive amounts of lawsuits happening right now. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for this discussion. I came hoping to get on first base and understanding the complexities of this, and I appreciate your time.
2025 Avatar Associates reevaluation update contract.
I gave it to Cordell to review for me, and he didn't have the chance to get it done before tonight's meeting, but there wasn't any significant changes between what they're gonna do from what they did in 2020 to what they did in 2025. The real change was the amount. 2020 cost $99,300. This next year's reval is gonna cost $109,776, which is about $10,500 more
Than what we have.
than what we did in 2020.
What do we have put away?
108,000. So
We're doing
like,
great.
we're right on able to cover it. But my suggestion would be next year, you figure, we've only been putting 10 away because we had banked for a while, but I think we're gonna have to start at 20 to keep
up
in
with
line
the
to being ready for 2030.
Can I make a comment and suggestion?
Quickly.
I'm wondering, would it be possible to have, I think his name is Chad, or his representative, come to a selectmen's meeting and answer questions by taxpayers? I think that would, at one point last year or the year before, the selectmen were gonna I thought they had invited him, but then it never happened. But I think there are a lot of questions that people have as far as our taxes go. There's inequities across the board, and I think the constituents would really, really benefit from a half an hour chat with him.
If I'm not mistaken, they can reach out.
Well, they come through me, I make an appointment to
You
talk
can
with
make an
Chad.
appointment with Chad if you'd like.
No, I just thought, not just for me, just for the taxpayers of Madison.
Understand the process that they use perhaps.
Before the end of the year, Chad will be coming to one of your meetings to start the process for explaining what's gonna happen with the rebound next year.
Okay.
We
So
just
he'll
have
be
to
here
pick the
before
date.
the end of the year to discuss the process.
In here?
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. Great, thank you.
That comes with the revow, they come and talk.
So
At a
we'll be-
selectmen's meeting or
Yes.
individual appointments?
At one of these meetings.
Oh, good.
We'll be looking at that at our next meeting, November 12th.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Perfect. Whole business, Conway Branch Planning Group report.
I went to that meeting last Thursday over in Ospey.
Yep. Looks like they have was this bill?
That bill was passed,
It
so
was passed.
we have to, be involved. A lot of the discussion was mostly having to do with a 3-mile stretch in Ospey.
Yeah.
Because once you get up to this area, you know, it's broken, you know what I mean? You
Right.
can't, there's sections where there's no tracks anymore. From what came out of mostly the things that I got out of it was, that there's gonna be some responsibility from the town to find funding opportunities to make all of this work. They have another meeting November 21st at 9:30, same place. And they want each town to write up their thoughts to be discussed at the next meeting.
About what to do with the property if and when they clean it up, take the tracks up. It sounds like they're taking tracks up.
Well, that's the thing, they talk about taking the tracks out because the state owns part of it, but they'll only take tracks out under certain circumstances and only if they're really worth something. If they can reuse them or,
Sell them.
or, yeah,
Looks like-
they didn't talk so much about selling them as taking them out of here and moving them to another section of track or something. There is a section that's, I don't know if the correct word is owned, but, Mr. Underwood, who has the train station, the Silver Lake Post Office, there's like a, I think they said it was a 780-foot stretch that
He owns.
I wasn't sure if he owned it or had rights to it, because there's still rights for freight to go over it, for freight, trains to go over it, but not like passenger trains. There's one section that has this weird easement to it that he owns, but,
I mean, they just took out tracks on 41. Just,
Right.
they're
And
here.
I said that at the meeting, that there's, you know, there's several breaks in it to try and get to further
So-
up, to get to Conway, because it's the whole branch, it's, you know, the Conway branch, but it's broken. So, unfortunately, it was a lot of speculation and all that kind of stuff was what was talked about at the meeting. I mean, there was a lot of things discussed. So, I really,
I mean, there's some sponsors of this bill. They got tracks in place, tracks missing, they have ownership there or some kind of rights that you can't go beyond Silver Lake. Dead ends at Silver Lake, unless they somehow get rights from the Underwood people to give that up.
right.
And if anyone's been north of that, I don't know what they're gonna do with it, because most of it's, you're not gonna drive a train over, I'll tell you that right now. I mean, it's gonna sink right into the ground.
No, but the state of New Hampshire's not gonna renege any of their, it seems like they're not gonna give up any of their rights to anything.
They paid the town back in 20 years ago, when there was a discussion about where the condos are now. That used to be a general store, and he was encroaching on the right-of-way of the train station, of the rails. And we were involved in a very big lawsuit back and forth about who owns to the waterfront and who doesn't own to the waterfront. And the state cap, we were into this lawsuit for 50 grand, if I remember right. And the state came to the town of Madison and said, I tell you what, we're gonna give you $50,000, we're gonna take control of it, see you later, goodbye. We took the 50 grand, there you go, you're done. You own it. They wanted to buy back all the rights so that they could run trains again. Now they wanna rip up the trail.
They have ideas of, there's certain rules for, I guess there's the track spread itself is like 4 feet 8 inches or something like that. And then there's another 30 feet to each side that's like a right-of-way or an easement around the track.
And that would put it right into those condos.
So that's, and they were talking all about that, yeah, and the sections that go along the water. You know,
Yeah.
there isn't that much space between the track and the water.
No, there
you
isn't
know.
30 feet.
And if you wanted to make those into walking trails or whatever, there's certain sections where there's wetlands and all that, so you can't make a trail through the wetlands, so you have to direct it back onto the tracks and come back off again. And there were a lot of things all over the place for what you can do. There's people who, what they call them, the putt-putt trains from Wolfboro, Those use some of the rails, things like.
They were using them here in Silver Lake, actually, they was running north a couple of miles,
Oh, okay,
and he was coming back. He did that,
so
just
there's,
until he got ill.
yeah, so it's, I don't know what to bring back to them, but I'll do some more research and then we can
Yeah,
hear. But there has to be, it's mandated in the bill that there has to be 3 meetings. So there's gonna be, there was that first one, there's gonna be one in November, one in December down in Concord, and they kinda left themselves enough space to have another meeting if they had to before January. So. I don't know, it wasn't all that helpful.
So it's
This
like,
was the first meeting.
Yes. There was about 15 people. It was DOT, Dred, Joe Kenny, Mark McConkey, Ossipee Town Administrator, quite a few people from the public. Well, not from the public, there's about 3 people from the public who are familiar with the rails and that kind of thing.
So you're gonna go on November 21st for us? Unless one of you guys can attend, that happens to be a date I can't attend.
what time is it, Nicole?
9:30 a.m.
On the 21st?
Yeah. We'll figure it out before then. Sure.
Are these public and open meetings, or are they by invitation only?
They're public, are they not?
Oh, I don't know, they were talking about them being, that first one wasn't published as a public meeting.
We'll find out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And we have the engineer that's not ready yet.
No, not yet, but he'll definitely have it for me for your next meeting, because we have to let them know by the 15th, and they are aware that we want to switch them.
Good. All right. Selectmen Gray.
I had someone ask me to ask about the cable contract.
Still working, the attorney's still working on it for us. She was trying to get some of those other little towns, or other towns settled with same issues that we had before they brought ours forward.
Okay.
Those all, so we're still,
That's still there.
it's still being worked on, and yeah.
I actually had PFAS as an item, but it's on the agenda, we talked about it quite a bit. One thing that occurred to me was, we periodically, respond to resident requests to fill swimming pools with fire trucks. Are the fire trucks confidently not PFAS?
Yeah, well, I mean, to the best of my ability, yes, there's never foam in the water tank. And any water we would use would come from
Different
a
hose?
source, Silver Lake or one of our dry hydrants were closest to wherever that swimming pool may be. We don't fill fire trucks with well water,
Right, right,
it'd take too long.
right. And then, different hoses would be used and,
Yeah, if at all, most of the time we have an automatic dump valve on the
Okay.
tank truck.
all right, thank you. Just kind of an afterthought there. I can't recall if Wilcox and Barton gave us any estimates for, I know they said well remediation would have to be, they would do the consulting part, but not the remediation part. Any guesstimate, even if it's just this well,
5,000 to 7,000. That was on the list.
one time?
Well, that's they call it a point of use treatment system. So each one that we have to do, that's the best he could give us was $5,000 to $7,000. So the treatment apparatus that we need to put in on that town well is estimated at $5,000 to $7,000.
And was that, he kind of said there were 2 phases to it. There was like a temporary treatment system, and then there was a more, you had to do a more permanent type solution.
I don't recall.
I don't recall that, but
Okay. So when you have the answers from DES about whether or not we're public water supplying, can we please be labeled as one? And then whether or not, they call it human receptors, be tested. Perhaps we could put together a memo to the employees with information from DES about what they say about that, what they recommend, or what type of testing and is it covered and things like that. Send a memo to the employees so that they know to get tested and all that. Or based on the DES recommendation. And is it possible that we could put the 178-page report up on the website? Like on the, do we have an emergency management page? I can't even remember.
I don't.
Linda, do you remember if we have an emergency management or
I don't.
if it's just under fire department or?
I don't remember.
I'm on the site all the time, I can't remember. Yeah, I'd like to see that page go up and just have some, or that report go up, so that folks could just, it's readily available to them. Anybody have any objections to that? And then, yeah, and if it has the schedule in it, then that's fine. And then, it's a huge budget item, and we're talking $165,000 for, just the dam plan, so to speak. And then $2 million for fixing it, and however many hundreds of thousands they're estimating the PFAS remediation is going to be. Plus, I know you guys need a backhoe, plus a chipper. I mean, working on the CIP, that list is getting
Plus, what was the
bigger and
last one?
longer.
What was the last thing you needed?
The chipper, someone said our chipper is practically beyond repair,
Yeah, that's probably true.
and that we had to rent. And I think that was estimated at $60,000, because it's an industrial chipper. So, it's just the list, and of course the grader, it's gonna be an expensive year, and we need to start really budgeting wisely for so much of this. Again, the CIP will help, but we need numbers as fast as we can get them for all of it, and start planning. And start shopping around now if we know we're gonna need a chipper, and know how much we would have to put out a warrant article for. And with the PFAS, the worst well being that well right in front of library and fire department, and it flowing downhill to Forest Brook, we will have to consider where Forest Brook goes. Consider if that's part of the expanded testing, so. So yeah, I guess the next action items I would request is putting the report on the website, and then, Mike, when you have those information, putting together a memo to employees. And then I guess we just wait for the test results.
Is that it for your list?
Nope, that was it, thank you.
John?
I'm all set.
John's all set. Heather can't be here. Our Halloween event went well. Gonna consider moving it back to an evening event so we can get more attendance next year. Thursday is trunk or treat sponsored by the PTO, but Madison Rec has a trunk. And basketball registration opens November 1st. I think that's it. Madison Rec also helped PTO with a cabin at Halloween Town, which went swimmingly. I don't have anything on my list. Linda?
I do. Speaking of sports, I had the porta potty over there until November 7th, and I didn't know how far fall sports went into November.
Next Wednesday. It's the last practice.
Perfect.
And that is the 7th, isn't it? No, it's the 6th.
So that worked?
Yeah,
Okay,
that works
so the
perfect.
7th is okay.
Next Wednesday is the last practice.
Alright,
So we had to pull out of the Carroll County tournament because we had a lack of attendance for the tournament this Saturday.
Voting next Tuesday.
Hey, how are we gonna
Who's
cover
gonna
that, by the
be
way?
there?
I'll be here all day. I took the day off. I got a couple parent-teacher conferences at the school, so
Same, I plan on taking most, if not all of the day. Are we allowed to all three of us have to either be there or have agents, right?
There's always a discussion matter where the,
way I read the RSA is that yes, we have to have 3 representatives there, 2 of us and a rep or all 3 of us, but it has never been a very big issue as long as there's at least one of us present.
yeah,
Does it, if 2 or more are present, does it have to be posted or no, because there's no town business being discussed?
Right, it's not,
No,
well, you did post it, cause you guys put
Yeah.
up a warrant saying that,
Yeah, it
that's
is
where
posted.
it's gonna be, and you're required to be there, so you essentially posted that you'd be there,
Okay,
so.
John, you don't wanna hang out with me all day?
I will be in and out in the course of the day.
At the ABC meeting, they asked about rearranging your drawdown. And I wanted to check with you guys before I do that.
What's wrong with my drawdown?
Well,
I think the discussion was to do it by warrant article. No?
well, I thought that they wanted to rearrange this, and then you'd need another one that would give you the totals. This way here, they wanted it to say, like DPW administration, DPW highway, DPW Parks and Rec, so that they'd
'Cause
all
those are
land
all
in the
one article.
same, so they'd land together, and then they wanted it to be like public safety, police, public safety, fire, so they'd all kind of land together.
Yeah.
If I understood that correctly.
Yeah, is that correct, Sharon?
Yeah, from an organizational standpoint, it makes sense when we're looking at drawdowns to be able to look also at like a department level overall. When you have administration dash DPW, it ends up, because it's alphabetical, it ends up being up and outside of the rest of DPW. So you gotta go through 3 or 4 pages to find all of DPW's expenditures. And I'm not picking on DPW, they just happen to be the example where alphabetically, they don't all fall together. So if it had the category of, say, police and then all of their sub-accounts, it had DPW, all of their sub-accounts, it had, whatever, Parks and Rec, and all of their sub-accounts, then it would be much easier from a drawdown perspective to be looking at the overall percentage, and then we could compare it to the warrant articles, because the warrant articles list, list what each area, I'm not gonna call it a department, because it's not done necessarily by departments, what each area is authorized to expend.
Yeah, cause like,
Well, if you look, I'm looking at it, it looks like DPW is the only one that's done that way. The fire department only has one line, the police
Well, they have a
department.
warrant article, it's called public safety, and it's ambulance, emergency management, fire, and police.
It would give you a more complete picture, more easily identifiable by looking at that drawdown where the town stands with respect to each one of those articles that the town has voted on.
It's not gonna give you a subtotal of all of those 4 in that document there.
Are we still gonna have this document? Or does this document get wiped out?
Well, it would be that, it would be revamped.
And we might as well go back to the way we used to do it back in the day,
Right.
when the police department or the fire department listed every bit of their expense under their category, including benefit package, including gasoline and vehicles and tires and everything. That will give you the most complete picture. That was what we had once before.
that'd be incredible.
Huh?
That'd be incredible to have.
Well, that's the way it used to be. You used to be able to look at the bottom line. Well, the fire department shows you one piece anyhow. But the police department, where you throw, your vehicles get thrown in there, your fuel expense gets thrown in there. So that when you look at the bottom line to the police department, That's what it cost you to run the police department. That's the way it used to be. Way back.
Wouldn't that be relatively easy? It would just be their budget.
What's it gonna do to your?
Right.
You're speaking to the choir.
Huh?
You're talking QuickBooks, nothing.
I just want, I need to verify to make sure that it's not gonna, if I change the name of the category, that it's not gonna throw it off in terms of my history in that line.
Right.
That's my main concern, I guess. Because the way QuickBooks is written up, you don't see it on this drawdown, but you know, it's an expense with a subcategory of administration, DPW, a subcategory of phone.
Right.
So if I just wanna be assured
You
that.
still have the history to track.
Right, it's, I won't, if I change names and things, it won't mess up the history. That's my concern on
See,
that,
for instance, the
and I can't.
transfer station, which
make
I'm well
pretend
addressed
I'm
on.
not physically changing things.
The expense of the new truck should be thrown into that department, because that's all part of hauling
Running the
road.
department.
It should be there. And the repairs to any pieces of equipment should go there, not in DPW.
Yep.
But I don't know what kind of bookkeeping nightmare that would be to bring that all back, but that's the way it used to be. So you could look at the bottom line of every department and know exactly what you're paying.
Or
Like one for article,
But
one for general government, one for, you know, safety, and one for DPW.
But then you've got your issue with the paperwork to the state matching up with public safety.
Would that be easier?
Oh, definitely. So it'd
I'd,
be kinda
I'd
like.
rather see it done that way than make a nightmare for what we're currently reporting.
So there'd be 4 drawdowns in a sense. There'd be the whole drawdown, just like it is right there. Then there'd be an Article 3 one, which was just all of Public Works. Then there'd be an Article 4 one that would be all of public safety.
Well, it's
And
just,
then the
I have
general
a separate
government.
one specifically for the rec right here somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
I would rather see it done as a separate report than to change the way this is done.
John, do you, back in your files, do you have a copy of old one, or Linda, do you have a copy of what he's talking about?
I think it was before your time.
Yeah, it definitely was.
John, that hair's getting a little white.
Huh?
Your hair's getting a little white.
Yeah. Another one's getting away. I mean, I was a fan of doing that, because to me, it simplified my job.
Yep.
You can sit there and go, boom. One of the reasons some of this got changed around is when we had our DPW head, not the one we have today, the one we had prior,
Couple ago.
couple ago. They wanted to be able to move guys around, not have them, because we were keeping track of where people worked. And it became a nightmare, so what they did is they put all the salaries together, like my salary is in DPW. Really should be in transfer station. So they did that so that we could move people around, not necessarily the transfer station, but we could move guys around within the administration of DPW. We could move them around without saying, I worked at the cemetery today, and I worked on the beach yesterday, and I worked on a truck today. That gets kind of confusing, so that was done by head of DPW a while back. Kind of made sense, it gives him more flexibility to move people around under the DPW head. Not to say it was the most perfect system.
If you happen to dig up a copy of that, that would be really
Oh,
helpful.
boy.
You know you have it somewhere.
Let me look at my desk. There's stuff in my desk that is old.
I'd rather see a separate report for those items.
Keep this in.
Keep this intact.
I mean, I've grown accustomed to this.
Yeah.
So it's essentially DPW and the police that are the ones that cause wreak havoc.
There was one that I had, again, it was similar to what Adam's talking, well, it was similar to what's being just talked about for rec, and it was probably a year ago. And it had broken down, okay, fees, but then you could see that it was, you know, what fee was for Carroll County Rec Directors. You could, you know what I mean, like, you could have the subcategories, and you could see what, you know, what each line was under that.
It's a detail as opposed to a drawdown.
Yeah,
Right, and you had for like the rec department.
Yeah.
Yeah, we give those to the department heads.
Okay.
They get their little section, so they can go through it and make sure that everything's being posted.
Even
how
though-
many of those, how many of those are there? How many different departments that get that report?
Oh, it's mostly, well, 1, 2,
Maybe to cut you off, I'm sorry.
3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 maybe. A lot of them are, you know, you wouldn't need one, it's maybe 6 or 7.
Okay. If that's a report that you already have, is that something that the ABC could have, that where you're not reinventing things?
Yep. Yes, it's gonna be a lot
Yeah.
of stuff.
For instance, this is my spreadsheet for the transfer station. It handles all our fees and where they go. Demolition and bulkhead are two big items. Last weekend, the 21st, we shipped out 11.4 tons of material. The tipping fee at Mount Carberry was $820.80. With the shipping, it was $1,140. I collected $1,220, which is just about where we belong, just make it slightly more, not killing anybody. But I had to add in that difference. It went from $72 a ton to about $100 a ton when you include the truck, the driver, the fuel. That doesn't show up anywhere in here. It shows up on what I do, so that I know that we're charging the right amount of money, and not too much money. Some people think we charge them too much, but, by the way, we've collected $63,954 the year so far. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents.
Anything else on your list, Linda?
Square numbers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need the breakdowns for what's going into what we got exactly from Square for everything still.
Yeah. I feel like I should send myself an email right now and not open it until tomorrow when I'm at my laptop.
That's it for me.
Chief?
Just last,
The one I was looking at.
just last week, we finished up with FEMA, I don't know how to say it, not the largest project. There's 2 remaining from the July 16th, 23 event. It has 21 roads into it, all the repairs and everything. That was submitted into the FEMA process for review and approval, whatever. So that's ongoing as of last Thursday. The remaining project is all of the culverts that went into Colby Hill. And have been working on that with them for the last 2 weeks, and he thinks he can have that in shape to submit into the process by the 15th of November. If that happens, all of the work will be done and the projects will be pending approval for and that'll finish us for the July 2023 event. I conveyed the board's vote with regard to the Modoc Hill project, and he had a follow-up question, which I'm gonna pose now. The way that they do their process, there was two projects, all related to the same site, but one was for emergency work, which we said we had a project because we bought those steel plates to put over the culvert thing. given the issue with the timing and everything, the reason they asked us to withdraw the project, he would like you to consider withdrawing at least that emergency work project, because there's no way that we can get funding for that, because it isn't really based on the scope of the frequency of the damage over time in 2023. And the timing of the purchase compared to the installation and everything, it doesn't line up so that we can make an argument that the measure that we took was immediately related to, because basically the emergency work that we're claiming happened before the road was washed out in their eyes. So we can't, it's only a matter of basically the cost of those plates and which was not insignificant.
Right.
But, and the man hours to install them, but as he said, there's no way we can write it so that you can get reimbursed for a measure that you took before the storm happened.
How much was it?
12,000 for the plates,
Yeah, they were like 6,000 apiece.
plus the man hours or whatever that went into installing them, and a little bit of gravel, I would imagine.
But, and regardless, and I did tell him that I missed the first part of the meeting, but I assume that you approved your minutes from the last meeting, as you usually do. I'll get a copy of those from Linda in the morning and send them.
What does it do to the project if we don't withdraw that funding? Are they gonna deny the whole thing just because of that little bit?
No, it's two separate projects, but it's just,
They're basically asking us not to spend their time on something they know isn't going to go.
right, and he says he's not upset, but he's upset. I mean, he was not happy when I told him that we're not gonna withdraw him entirely, because he just doesn't see, he's black and white, and he's a bureaucrat. He has a job to push these things through the pipeline, and common sense doesn't enter the pipeline. And he said, I don't understand, why wouldn't they withdraw it? And I said, well, Ken, we have a large expense. It could have been much larger, thankfully it isn't, but we'd like to pursue getting 75% of that smaller number. He said, yeah, but I already told you that. I said, yeah, but we feel like we can explain the passage of time because steps were taken. And I said, you know, the administration of government takes time. It just does. It's no different in a small town. You have to send out stuff to bid. You get 30 days to review it. You get their proposals back. You got a period of time. I said, time goes by. You can't just say we didn't do anything, because we can show you on paper the steps that we did take. And I said, the selectmen want to make that argument. And I said, I want to make that argument, because I got a lot of time tied up in this stuff.
I'm not sold on withdrawing even the plates. I understand his argument to some degree, but
Okay.
Can I ask a question? How many culverts were replaced on Colby Hill Road?
I want to keep to the topic for a minute, Donna.
I'm sorry.
So this is Modoc Hill, $12,000 plus labor, and that's a piece of a project. He's asking us to withdraw that piece.
Yes, and it's hard for me to explain because they have different categories that they put projects in. It's not just, we have one, the way that we look at it, we have one road with one culvert that we had to fix. It's all one thing to us. Their emergency work goes into a category B, I think it is. The reparation to pre-disaster condition is category C, and then there's other categories, and at the end, category Z is administration. So you've got this whole spectrum, and they put projects in. So yes, to us, it's the same road, the same culvert, but they're saying the emergency work in their eyes is right after the storm happened, what did you do?
So does this fit into another category?
No.
Okay.
No, and It's just, it's.
Bureaucracy.
Well, it's that, but
But
it's
it's-
also the frequency and severity of the rainwater that we got in the summer of 2023 was substantial. And that particular section of road was damaged at least 3 times. 2 of those times, there was no official disaster declared. And what happened was we fixed it twice, and then we had a plan to replace the culverts, and when it washed out that final time, we just left it there and did nothing. Because we had a plan to have a contractor replace them. So their argument is, because of that, you didn't, the emergency work that we did was not related to the specific storm event in time.
Is this gentleman the official approver, or
No,
he
no,
just
no,
sends
no,
down
he
the
is the-
pipeline?
Project development, PDMG, I can't remember what the M and the G are. But no, he's fairly not, he's low on the totem pole, because he's got a direct boss above him, and there's 2 other people above him before they get to the,
But he's
Sounds
the-
like this guy's job is to keep as much of this stuff off his boss's desk as possible. That's,
that's a pretty good synopsis from what I'm witnessing. Although he says that's not what he's doing.
that's fine. He has a job to do, we all do.
And so what's the other part of the project?
The actual replacement of the culverts.
And that was that $99,000 invoice?
89. I believe,
Well, it was-
89,000.
It was 99 after a credit, or 99 before a credit, but.
No, that was actually, that was a totally different invoice. That was a replacing in kind invoice, just to give us a number.
It cost us 89,000.
All right, we'll go with it.
And then there was a $12,000 credit, which brought it down to 77. That we made the check out to them for, because we already paid for some of the stuff.
The $99,000 figure was an estimate to replace in kind so that we had something to give FEMA if we were to do it differently.
Still 89K to the town then.
Yes,
And that's the other piece
But
of
that
this
doesn't-
project.
that doesn't include the 12,000 we spent on the steel plates
Right,
previously.
so that's kind of the 2 different pieces to the project.
Right.
It came up in the budget committee meeting, and it's passed at this point, but I'll just make the point that I made in the budget committee meeting, was that my understanding of that $89,000 invoice, that was a $39,000 estimate. My understanding was that the select board said, can the DPW review it, and then let us know, and it got paid by miscommunication. So, at least that was my, you had a different, I won't say miscommunication, I'll just say different understandings. That I thought that was gonna be reviewed by the DPW and then come back to the select board for payment, but it didn't, it just went straight to payment.
And I thought it was have the DPW director review it, and if he was good with it, let it go.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Anyway, are we pulling out the 12,000 or not?
Does he think it'll slow it down, does it slow down the payment of the rest of it?
Well, let me back up for a step. There's 2 projects within the disaster from July. One is already in the pipeline, the other one hopes to go into the pipeline by the 15th of November. Those are separate and distinct from this. This is a different disaster. And those 2 things, what he straight up told me is that there's no way he can present that emergency work project, the category B steel plate. There's no way he can present that to get it funded because of the issues with timing.
Okay, so then it makes sense to withdraw it if there's no way that he can present it to get reimbursed. I mean, if he's telling us, why did you vote yes, I can't present it, why aren't we then saying, okay.
Well, and again, it's the hesitancy of it's an issue of trust, I guess, for me. I don't know, this is the first venture into this area for me. Starting with the July storm, I have not gone through a FEMA disaster project management. We've never had one in all of my time.
So it all comes down to that, those $12,000 worth of steel plates.
That's basically it, and.
So is that gonna does that have any relation to the
No,
89,000?
I would think the worst thing is that we would eventually be notified that that's gonna be not funded, that project, the category B project would not be
Do
funded.
we still own those plates, do you know?
Oh, yeah, I'm not
I
sure
don't
where
think
they are, but we
Yeah,
bought them.
We definitely own them.
And
So we have the potential to use them elsewhere if we need to. Because they've been removed, because the road's been replaced,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
road's been repaired.
Yeah, I
Well, I
don't,
think
So
that's-
the odds of us needing them again are probably slim as none. We haven't used them in 20 some odd years.
Say it.
Well, I don't know, we
Don't
could have
say
used
it.
some when we were working over, we rented some when we were doing the culvert over on
Oh, yeah.
East Madison.
If we've used them before. Otherwise, I would return them to whomever we bought them from and get a credit.
All right, so separate
Okay.
project, sorry.
Go ahead. And then that way.
It doesn't sound like it's gonna slow it down. We just need to decide if we wanna make this guy's job easier or not. That's really the gist of it.
If he's gonna help us with other things, then that might behoove us, since we have these plates that we can use elsewhere, potentially.
well,
If he can help us sell the rest of the project, it might be worth it.
like I say, I'm here just looking for an answer to his question.
So if he kicked it back to us again and we have to ask him to help us with other things, I think it behooves us to respect his request for us to reconsider.
Well,
And then
I
try
would
to get the 80,000, 89,000.
if the plates have value to us, then I would take them off. And we own we own them.
All right. Well, I will make a motion that we withdraw category B off that particular submission to FEMA.
Oh, second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I'll convey that in the morning, and like I say, we're chronologically working through this. The next thing is finishing up, the July 18th event. So there's one more project open, and to answer the question that was asked, off the top of my head, it's 13 culverts.
And did the town pay for them all?
Yes, and in two different ways. The majority of them, 10 out of the 13 were replaced in the contract with A.J. Coleman and Son when they reconstructed the road. 10 of those culverts were installed by them. The immediate aftermath of the storm, the town installed 3 of them in order to basically create passage from
The people to get.
private property
Right.
to get to the road, to either go out through the MODOC end, or if they were on the lower end, down to Route 113, Conway Road.
So there was no cost to the property owners?
No.
Speaking of
Does that
culverts,
set a precedent?
No.
I don't think so. Not given the condition of the road. It would have been an emergency situation.
that just reminded me, somebody else asked me about culverts and something about what the DPW can replace and what they can't replace based on size of culverts and all of that. They'd asked me about 48-inch culverts, and I looked it up, and they can replace 36-inch or under 36-inch culverts, and they can do more than that if they get a free certification from the state. So I didn't know what the status was on our DPW folks and being able to replace larger culverts in-house with the certification.
What was
not-
the price tag for that road?
Hold on.
I know they've taken some UNH T2 classes, and I wanna say they took culvert classes, but I don't know the details of what that covered, the class covered.
Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, different hat entirely.
Perfect.
There's an election coming up next week. I didn't know if you'd heard about that.
I did.
Yeah, I saw the news.
Texts.
We're up to just 248 absentee ballots issued, which is a large number even for a presidential election that wasn't COVID related. And you can still get absentee ballots if you are not gonna be in town or you can't for some reason come out. I know we do have some folks that have been injured recently, and I have been even known to come out at lunchtime. If you can't get out of your house, I will bring you all of the paperwork necessary, including your ballot, to make it easy. If you need that, please call my office, and I will accommodate as many people as humanly possible. But
When is the last day to get an absentee ballot?
the last day to get an absentee ballot, that's a great question, is Monday, November 4th. And it has to be returned in person no later than 5 p.m. on Monday, November 4th. Coming through the mail must be received by the time the Madison post office closes at 5 p.m. on the 5th. And I heartily recommend anybody, if at all possible, to hand deliver those ballots back. There's some wackiness going on with the United States Post Office, and don't take a chance of your ballot getting burned or misplaced or anything.
Only leaving that drop.
Yeah, please don't leave them in the drop box outside the door. Please
There's a
do
note
not
on
do
there
that.
that says it, but don't do it.
If you're gonna bring them back, I get here early every day, and if you're here early before the door's unlocked, just knock on it, I'll come get your ballot from you, whatever. Don't want you to, don't leave it unattended anywhere on that. But basically, I expect a big turnout. I'm glad to hear the board decided to be present, because I expect that we'll be inspected by the Attorney General's office. They typically do for presidentials. And this one's got a little bit more scrutiny to it than most recent past, so if you could try to, not two of you take a break at the same time, because we have had inspections in the past with no moderator and no selectmen. It doesn't go good for me. I have to sign documents and explain why.
We'll have to stagger parent-teacher conferences.
Well, if you're in the building, I think I can make
I
that.
tried to get all mine for 9:30.
They won't be that early.
Nope.
They're
That's, what's the,
They usually start in the south and work north. I don't know why, because then somebody at the end of the day ends up in Colebrook.
and then has to
I would have
drive.
gone to Colebrook and worked myself, I think.
Yeah.
That's all I can. Yeah, I think that's all.
Chief?
Not much. We collected about 30 pounds of prescription medications on Saturday, just in one day for the drug take back. At the same time, I emptied the receptacle here in the lobby, which was about 14 pounds. So if you can't make the next drug take back day, you can always come and drop it off here in the lobby.
In what format? Like, do people just drop their whole pill bottles in? Do they put them in a
I-
Ziploc or?
You can bring it in any form. You can leave labels on them. You can leave them in the bottles. I've had people dump them into Ziploc bags. I've had them emptied out just in a pill form. It's just a big, heavy-duty bag in there, and
Oh, okay.
it gets sealed up and taped off and transported out.
That it?
That's it.
Love it. Signature items.
Just two.
Come on down, baby.
Yeah. I would say in and out with some frequency would be fine. I won't believe
with that, I will motion that we enter non-public session per RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, little a, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him or her unless the employee affected, 1, has the right to a meeting, and 2, requests the meeting be opened, in which case the request shall be granted.
Second.
Roll call vote, Joy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Adam? Aye. Thank you, Dasha.
You can ask Mike.
Yeah, to meet with us, to walk